John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13 from 1976. This is a patron-requested retro review. What did you think of this movie if you happen to see it? Have you seen the remake? Is that worth me checking out? Let's talk about that in the comments. Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk retro review for John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13. Like I said earlier, this is a patron-requested video. Jeremy Hobbs, he's one of my newest patrons. He gave on that level of citizen of Durbania, and at that level, he can pick a theological analysis for me to do, and he could pick a movie for me to review. So, my theological analysis for Rocky 2, which was his choice, that is posted up on my channel right now, and you can check out my theological analysis for that. I had a blast putting that together. I hadn't seen the Rocky movies in forever, so that was really fun to go back and do that one. And I'd never seen either the 1976 Assault on Precinct 13, and I'd never seen the new remake, so it was cool to go back and catch this 1976 version first and watch it for the first time. So thank you so much, Jeremy, for that. So, diving into this review.
It's the most shattering assault on a police station in history. Assault on Precinct 13.
What does it mean when an officer calls in a 3542?
Assault and battery. The way I remember that, I picture 35 assault shakers and 42 batteries.
Assault on Precinct 13. You know what's really fun about this movie is John Carpenter. And I feel like I've gotten to know this guy's style better thanks to Cody Leach and Lee of Drum Dums, because they've been, you know, mentoring me in the world of horror films, and I've been watching more and more horror films, and I've watched a lot of John Carpenter directed horror films. Now, Assault on Precinct 13 is not a horror film, but it has a lot of the stuff that John Carpenter does well. Like, one of the things he does well is, like, he does the music, so do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. So, like, you hear that theme throughout the whole thing. There's a point where it kind of drives me crazy, but then there's another point where it's like, I mean, how often do you hear a score like that? And how cool is it that this guy did the music, wrote the screenplay, and directed the movie? So, I mean, I just appreciate the amount of work that went into that, and it is a pretty good and memorable score, which is something that you want. But the best that John Carpenter does, I think, is he gets you to know these characters really well and attach to them, and he's really good at building tension, and that's what this movie is. Now, at first, I hit play on this movie, and it was a little bit slow. But the reason it's a little bit slow is because it's a little bit slow in 2018 standards. I mean, in 2018 standards, something has to blow up every 5 seconds. There has to be somebody who shows up in tights over here, or something big or bad over there. And in this one, it's a lot more tension building, story building, and character building. And so, it's a different world back then, it's a different way of putting the movie back together, and so accepting that, it's like, okay, yeah, it's a little bit slower compared to today's standards, but it really does have some good writing. Some of the writing is cheesy. By cheesy, I just mean the lines are cheesy, but the actual story is pretty darn good, and Carpenter did a really good job building the tension throughout this movie. I mean, for instance, just an example of tension building. In the beginning, you see a father and daughter, and they're just driving, they're having these cute, precious moments together as they're driving, and it's like, oh, she's gonna die! And she dies! But the way the tension gets built to that death scene is this. They have a couple scenes together where you see father and daughter, and you're like, oh, this is so cool. How are they going to tie into this plot? How are they going to end up at the precinct? Because there's no other reason that we're spending this much time on these characters. And then the way he builds the tension is, the movie actually opens with the cops taking out a whole bunch of people in these gangs. And so these gangs had taken a whole bunch of assault weapons, and so the fact that they just lost a lot of people has inspired them to, you know, work together. So they stole all these high-powered assault weapons. Now they're going to work together for their vengeance. And so they're, like, out driving around. You got this one jerk who's out there, and he's, like, got his gun. He's just pointing it out the window at random people because, you know, he's trying out the new weapons. And he starts stalking an ice cream truck and starts bugging this ice cream truck guy. This ice cream truck guy watches the same car drive back and forth, back and forth. And with all the gang problems they've been having, this guy knows this has got to be trouble. And you're thinking, oh, Durbin's forgot what he was talking about. I have not. Because it keeps every once in a while going back to this father and daughter, attaching us to these characters and building this tension. What does an ice cream truck have to do with anything? How are these two characters going to tie into this? And suddenly, 2 and 2 start to come together. The little girl's going to go get ice cream, isn't she? and she's gonna go get ice cream at the worst possible freaking time, isn't she? So she goes to get her vanilla ice cream. She wants vanilla twist. She gets her ice cream. She walks away. The car drives back and forth, and she's fine. It's like, oh, thank God. Okay, there's gonna be some other way they tie into this plot. Nope. She got plain vanilla, and she wanted vanilla twist. Because she had to have her certain flavor, she goes back to the ice cream truck, and this jerk face just turns and looks at her, shoots her casually, and then shoots the ice cream truck guy. He had no vendetta that we're aware of against the little girl or the ice cream truck guy. He's just out and about having fun with his new toys, which is these massive assault weapons. And so right then and there, I'm connected to these gangs in a way that these guys need to be taken down. I got pulled into the story because what's going to happen to this girl? How's she going to connect to everything else? Then they kill her. Then the father runs off, kills the jerk face, and then the gangs follow him back to the precinct 13, that he runs into. So now this all-out assault happens on this precinct. Now, something else that was interesting about this movie, see, in modern day, here's what we would have to do. There'd have to be one central gang member, and then you have your main good guy, which in this movie would probably be our cop, which is his first night on the job, and his name is Ethan Bishop. And this precinct is shutting down, so he's assigned to go help them shut down, make sure things go okay, no too many crazy things happen. So, of course, the craziest thing that happened. But in 2018, we'd have to have one gang member who is like the leader and the equal to Ethan. And then Ethan and this guy will have to negotiate back and forth. They have to see that they both have incredibly strong wills. And then finally, at the end, the finale would be a contest of wills. So our enemy has a face and a personality, and our good guy has a face and a personality. But what's really interesting about this movie is our bad guys don't have a face or a personality. The face is the jerk face, in my opinion, and they kill him pretty much right at the beginning. And so then it's a bunch of extras that are the villains. So these extras are running around, they got all their assault rifles, and they're shooting, and I think what I like about it is it's different. So we don't have to have our good guys equal on the bad side out there, but instead it's this nameless, faceless monster that's out there shooting into this precinct. So everything focuses on everybody that is stuck in this building, and you know, their bonding, how they're going to work together, how they go from just being cops, receptionists, and prisoners to soldiers doing what they can to survive. And it's kind of interesting taking the whole of that energy and kind of putting it right there. Now, like I said, there is some corny dialogue. I mean, it's the 70s, so some of the dialogue, some of the character setup is a little cheesy. I mean, you got this bad guy, Napoleon, and that's like a nickname that he's earned because he's like this hardcore guy. So one of the ways they want to show you how hardcore he is, you know, when police are harassing him and they're talking to him and he's in his chains and stuff, he just looks at him and goes, "You gotta smoke?" I mean, every other line is, "You gotta smoke?"
Gotta smoke? Gotta smoke on you? Gotta smoke?
And it is kind of funny, but at the same time, it's a little bit cliche. It's like, oh, okay, so you're just kind of the cliche tough guy of the story, right? But then he is the cliche tough guy of the story and becomes one of my favorite characters of the story. Because as soon as the assault happens and they have to unchain him because they need as many men on guns as possible, and so that's also an interesting thing. But anyway, they give him a gun and he steps out into it and it's like, wow. I mean, yeah, he might be a criminal and a really dangerous guy, but now that the pressure's on, he's like a good man. And then you have the other criminal, his name is Wells, and I really liked him. So, like, my two favorite characters were the criminals, but it also, that shows how bad the gangs were and all the assault that they were bringing on. These were hardened criminals on a bus that stopped at this precinct because one of the criminals was sick. So these are hardened criminals, like, on their way to death row. Like, that's how bad these guys are. And suddenly, they're good guys, especially in comparison to this gang that's coming in. Lee is a really cool character because she's like so freaking tough. When the assault begins though, like some of the bad guys like pour into the building and they shoot her. Like she's back there, she's trying to unchain the prisoners and stuff like that, and these bad guys pour in, and it's a close-up shot of it hitting her arm, but she doesn't even react. Now that was kind of like awesome because it shows you how tough she is, but at the same time it was kind of a negative because they didn't go back to like her arm bleeding for a while in that scene. And she had no reaction whatsoever to being shot. So I was like, after a moment, I forgot she was shot until later when you see blood running down her arm. And, you know, you have Napoleon who goes, "How's your arm?" She goes, "Ah, it hurts like crazy and I can't move it, but I'm fine." But she says it monotone with no reaction. So I wanted to interpret that as super tough because, you know, Napoleon goes up there and goes, "Do you have a smoke?" And she did. "Do you have a light?" she pulls out a match and lights it with her thumb and lights up the cigarette. So she's kind of cliche in her toughness, and it was awesome to watch her light the match with her thumb. So she's like this really awesome hardcore character, but at the same time, I do count it a little bit of a negative that she could be shot and have that little of a reaction to it. I mean, she did go the whole movie, to her credit, without moving that arm. So she went kind of one-armed throughout this movie. One-armed, one gun. Every shot, like, took out a person. I don't know if that's a negative or if it just shows she should not have been behind a desk. I don't know. But it shows you how tough she is. And at the same time, I just went, you could give me some kind of reaction to being shot in the arm. I mean, say I need some Advil or something, or whatever they had back in 1976. I don't know. The only thing is the ending was a little bit of a letdown. Problem is, I can't think of a better way for this movie to end. It's just all the gang, they attack and pour into the building, and the good guys move down into the basement, and they kind of put up this like giant metal sign as a shield and kind of built like a little homemade bomb, and they were just going to shoot it and blow it up, and that was pretty much the ending. It was just a bunch of guys attacking the good guys. They shoot, they blow things up, other cops get there, the day is now saved. And I was like, oh, so after all that, it just kind of ends that way? But then it's like, but what other way what were they gonna do? What other way is there for this movie to end? I mean, gosh. So I'm happy that the majority of the good guys lived, and so I was just a little let down by that ending because the tension was high, and then it's just over. Though one funny thing in the end, again, to show you the toughness of Lee, right? This paramedic comes up to her, arm bleeding like crazy, and he's like, hey, we have a gurney for you. And he was rude, too. He's like, we got a gurney for you. And she just looks at him and walks right past him, never gets in the gurney, and walks right outside. And that's like the end of that. And that guy was so rude, and I was mad at that paramedic for being rude. What right did he have to be rude? He wasn't there when that whole building was being shot out. I mean, come on. Are you serious? Be nice. Be polite. If she wants to get in the gurney, let her get in. If she doesn't, let her walk out. You don't need to be rude about it. My gosh, she probably did better than you would ever in that kind of a situation. And then you had the cop Bishop and Napoleon becoming friends. It was kind of cool to see, like, they had a brotherhood that formed. So, you know, of course, Napoleon's going to go to prison. I would hope, though, that maybe they would give him a little leniency, maybe not go straight to death row or something, because, I mean, he did fight side by side with Bishop, and he was a really cool character in this movie. In the end, I'm giving this a B-. I enjoyed this movie. I had a lot of fun with this movie, but I don't feel like I'm in a hurry to watch it again, and I definitely don't need to own it. But I'm glad for the opportunity to watch it, and now I'm looking forward to the remake. Like, I had never seen the remake, so now that I've seen the original, I'm curious about the remake. Have you seen the remake of Assault on Precinct 13? Is it good? Let's talk about that in the comments. I want to say another thank you to Jeremy Hobbs. Thank you so much, man, for being a patron and for requesting this as the review, because it was cool to, like, you know, check out this movie and see what it was all about, see another John Carpenter film. So thank you so much for that, man. I really appreciate it. If you want to check out my Patreon, I have the link in my description, and you can check out the different rewards for different levels of giving and all that fun stuff. Hit the subscribe button and hit that bell on your way out. Hit that like button. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.